Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to completely reframe how you think about job security. We are diving into some truly eye-opening source material today, and honestly, it might just turn everything you thought you knew upside down. I mean, we've all been taught, right, from day one, that a steady paycheck from a single, reliable employer is the ultimate financial safety net. But what if the very thing making you feel so secure is actually, well, the absolute riskiest bet you're making? Today, we're breaking down exactly why relying on a single employer is a pretty dangerous economic gamble, and how just a slight shift in your perspective can change the whole game for you. Okay, so let's dive right into this with a pretty chilling story from our source material about a top-performing colleague. Picture this. It's just a regular Tuesday. This guy logs into a mandatory 9 a.m. video call. Literally 3 minutes in, his screen just goes black. His email connection is instantly severed. The entire company portal, gone. The whole scaffolding of his professional life that he'd built over the past 4 years is abruptly replaced by a single automated email sent to his personal address, basically just telling him how to mail back his company laptop. There was no manager on the call, no awkward human conversation, just a digital form and an address label.
Now, you might be thinking, well, his performance must have been slipping, right? Nope. He was a top performer. He had all the top-tier status and the gold stars to prove it. In fact, he had just shipped a major operational project early the week before, and his last review had him in the absolute highest bracket. But none of that mattered. Why? Because as the source points out, performance has never actually been the thing that protects you. When a financial spreadsheet somewhere decides that an operational line item needs to be eliminated, you're gone. And the spreadsheet doesn't read your glowing performance appraisals. Over coffee a few days later, this colleague voiced the exact same phrase millions of workers repeat in moments of sudden disruption. I need to get my CV out today. I have to find another job. It's this total instinctual panic, right? A rush to immediately replace exactly what was just taken away. But when faced with that panic, the source material asks a deliberately annoying, yet profoundly necessary question to break the cycle. And that question is, what if you don't? What if simply replacing one full-time job with another full-time job actually isn't the safest answer?
To understand the roadmap out of this single client trap, this explainer will walk through 5 key areas. We're going to start with the monopsony problem, move into the single tenant trap, explore the 4 doors of income, reveal the power of 2, and finish the whole thing up with a pragmatic structural resilience plan.
So, let's jump straight into section 1, the monopsony problem. To really understand this problem, we have to look at an economic reality that corporate culture rarely frames honestly. We've all been taught that a monopoly is bad, one seller holding all the power. But a traditional employer actually operates as a monopsony. That means they are the single buyer holding all the market power over the suppliers. And in this case, the supplier is you, selling your labor. When you hold a single salary job, you literally have exactly one buyer for the only thing you sell, your time. That single buyer sets the price, sets the hours, and as we saw earlier, can just stop buying on a random Tuesday morning with absolutely zero notice. Seriously, think about it like this. If an independent freelancer told you that 100% of their revenue came from one single client with absolutely no long-term guarantee, and that the client could terminate the relationship instantly, leaving them with nothing, you definitely wouldn't congratulate them on their amazing stability. You would call them dangerously exposed. You'd tell them to go find a second client before the sun goes down. Yet we slap the label salaried on the exact identical arrangement, and suddenly we praise it as this incredibly sensible, prudent life choice. It's kind of wild when you look at it that way. Which leads us perfectly into section 2, the single tenant trap. Picture your financial life as a building for a second. A landlord with a single tenant property enjoys a lovely, simple income right up until the very day that one tenant decides to leave. The moment that lease ends, cash flow drops instantly to absolute zero. But hey, the fixed overhead remains completely identical. It's a total catastrophe. On the other hand, a multi-tenant property easily absorbs a vacancy without a full-blown crisis. The building stays operational, the elevator still gets fixed, and most importantly, the mortgage still gets paid. Most of us have spent our entire adult lives operating as a single tenant in someone else's building, and we've called it a stable career. Now, you might be wondering, why is it set up this way? Well, the crucial point is that this single tenant setup persists not because of some shadowy, smoke-filled room conspiracy. It's simply because the system is completely optimized for institutional convenience. Banks love salaried borrowers because standardized pay slips make their mortgage math super simple. Tax authorities and governments absolutely love it because payroll deductions right at the source are way cheaper and easier than chasing down self-employed tax filings. And employers, quite reasonably, prefer a workforce that is too financially dependent on a single income stream to push back hard on pay or just walk away. Basically, the system is designed for everyone's resilience, except yours. All right, let's look at Section 3, the 4 doors of income, and see where money actually originates. So, according to the source material, wealth generation can basically be categorized into 4 structural mechanisms. Door number 1 is the one we all know, direct time exchange. You're trading your active hours for wages. It's honest work, but it's capped hard because, well, there are only 24 hours in a day. But look at these other options. Door 2 is scalable assets. This is creating something just once, like an article or a digital template, and it keeps paying you while you sleep. Door 3 is asset utilization, charging others to rent what you already own, whether that's a spare room or some camera equipment. And door 4 is value arbitrage, spotting a gap, buying low, and getting paid for your market knowledge and taste. The real beauty here is that you absolutely do not have to rely solely on that strictly capped first door. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed by all those options, don't worry. That brings us to Section 4, the power of 2. Listen, everyone hears the phrase multiple income streams and they immediately picture this massive, exhausting spreadsheet with 12 distinct rows of revenue, complex asset management, and endless, exhausting side hustles. And because 12 is exhausting, most people just do nothing. But forget 12. You absolutely do not need 12 income streams. The only number that genuinely alters your risk profile is 2. All of your systemic danger lives right there, in the gap between one buyer and 2 buyers. When you have one buyer, you have a single point of failure. Your financial downside is absolute termination. But the very moment a second party, someone who is entirely separate from your employer, pays you for a product, a service, or your expertise, you cross a major structural threshold. You completely remove that single client dependency from your financial foundation. You literally stop betting your entire livelihood on one person's mood or one company's spreadsheet. The author of our source material actually shares this fascinating personal reckoning about this. After 11 years of operating as a single tenant in a corporate building, they did some analytical work on a Saturday and sent out their very first independent invoice to a third-party client. They said they typed out that invoice with shaking hands. They'd been so deeply conditioned to view non-payroll income as somehow rogue or risky that sending a manual bill to a stranger felt recklessly illegal. But it wasn't. As they note, receiving that first modest bank transfer made them realize that terrifying $300 invoice was actually the first genuinely secure economic act they had done in a whole decade. So, how do we practically achieve this without losing our minds? Let's hit Section 5, the Structural Resilience Plan. The source material lays out this brilliantly pragmatic 4-step approach. Step 1, document your single point of failure. You need to honestly write down the percentage of your income that is entirely reliant on one boss's decision. If it's near 100%, just sit with that discomfort for a minute. It's going to be your catalyst for change. Next up, Step 2, deliver one skill to one new buyer. You don't need a massive business plan here. Just issue one invoice for something you already know how to do. Step 3, build one independent asset. Take a skill you'd confidently defend at a dinner party and turn it into a small guide or a template that exists completely outside of your working hours. And finally, Step 4, establish a specific liquidity reserve. Now, actually, scratch that. I really need to emphasize a crucial nuance here from the source material. Traditional employment is not the enemy. If you genuinely love your corporate role, the shape of your days, the people you work with, and the sweet benefits of paid leave, you should absolutely keep it. The goal here is definitely not to dramatically resign tomorrow morning in a blaze of principle. The goal is personal financial defense. We simply need to recognize reality and stop treating a single-buyer job as an unassailable fortress. Because it was never a fortress, it's just a single tenant in a single building. And as you're building out that safety net from Step 4, you have to drop the vague, fluffy title of an emergency fund. The source strongly recommends giving it an ugly, honest name, like the Black Screen Fund. You name it explicitly after the exact risk it's meant to mitigate, the terrifying risk of your screen going black on a random Tuesday. Naming the actual fear is exactly what forces you to feed the fund consistently, giving you the runway you need to make rational decisions if the worst actually happens.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to consider about your own career architecture. Who holds the real power in your building? You are so much more than your job title, and your labor was never meant to be leased exclusively to a single client. The salary can absolutely stay. Just ask yourself if you're truly comfortable letting one buyer own the entire building. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive today, and I highly, highly encourage you to take that first step towards securing your second buyer.